working, waiting, learning, planning. Tight, I can hear the sick and raise the dead.
Welcome back to Animal Songs, a story set to music, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb. The interpretation of dreams is a subtle art, a branch of the science of semiotics, messages encoded in personal iconography, visions we experience nightly inviting us to our own significant depths. I've heard it said that most people don't have a way to their interior. I've got a couple ways to get there. Come, down, down, down with me, into the waters of night. You'll see what I mean momentarily. So, sit back, relax, and watch the show. In your head, on screen, through the dots of your own eyes. What has been, will be, reborn, within. Below the darkness curdles. Inspiration. Crocodile. Meanwhile, in his beehive apartment, the wizard was busy. It was a Saturday, and so, armed with a straw broom, a gray feather duster tucked into one sleeve, and a dustpan and brush dangling out of the other, the wizard attacked the room. Clumps of hair and particles of food, breadcrumbs and rice kernels, whirled into a cloud around him, and the dustpan and brush snapped at these enemies, while the duster fanned debris into their bristled teeth and plastic jaw. Against one wall stood a heavy bookshelf, white like everything else inside, and shaped like a honeycomb filled with books. On top of this structure, blending in with the wall, there perched a silvery cat. The cat watched the wizard's escapade through slitted eyes. It yawned. Why? The wizard rounded on his friend and said, "Because, Tangy," for that was the cat's nickname, a shortened form of his real name. "It's Saturday." The cat covered his ears and yowled. "I'm almost done," said the wizard. "We have to get this place in ship shape. We have a visitor. Or that is to say, we will." The wizard took a turn around the room, beating the bookshelf with the duster, gliding the snapping dustpan and brush over the round table in the corner. In a moment he was finished. The apartment sparkled so brightly you could almost hear it sigh with relief, and in fact the wizard said to the place, "You're welcome." His sleeves were puffed out like balloons, they were so full of flotsam. Naturally he snapped his fingers and the garbage vanished, sending the robes billowing. The cat glared down at him and shook his head. Why? The wizard ignored him and turned to the wall. "On," he said. A spot of light shone in the center of the wall. It grew into a square which expanded until the wizard was standing before a great glass window. On the other side was a barren landscape. The cracked earth stretched far into the horizon where it sloped just slightly, and a path of dusty dirt outlined the edge of this desert. The wizard squinted at the road. Hands clasped behind his back, he stood silently for several minutes while Tangy, tail flicking, glared down at him. Nothing happened. The wizard glanced at the adjacent wall where 2 clock hands were fixed. Though there were no numbers around the white arrows, they pointed to approximately 4:25. "It is Saturday," the wizard mumbled. He turned back to the window and raised his maimed hand. He pinched his 2 fingers before his right eye, and suddenly the road was just outside. The wizard pressed his face against the glass, staring to the left down the dusty path. Only the wind came. He stayed pressed that way for a very long time. Finally, his trance was broken by a laugh behind his back. He turned to see Tangy dive from the bookcase and slink away, shaking his head. "Just you wait," said the wizard through clenched teeth. "I am never wrong." The old man paced before the window, head bent, brow furrowed, hands clasped behind his back. He rubbed his intact hand against the leather strap covering his wound, rubbing a gentle counterpoint to the methodical footfalls. Behind him, the clock arms turned. "I dreamed it, you filthy creature. It will happen." He glanced out the window again, perked up at a dust cloud, and when it passed with no accompanying traveler, he fell back into himself. The clock continued to spin. Finally, the wizard jumped. "It must be up to me." He snapped his pincer hand, and a wide-brim black felt hat appeared between his fingers. He unfastened the chin strap of his magenta cowl and tugged it free, releasing his long locks of gray hair, and he slipped the cowl into one sleeve while he set the felt hat in place. "Off," he said, and the window shrank until it was just another glint of glitter on the ivory wall. The wizard paced to the round door. In the corner stood a long white staff, a branch of ash twisted at the top into a gnarled shape vaguely resembling a duck beak. He reached out his pincer, and the instant his fingers closed around the staff, he transformed. In the wizard's place there now stood a small, pale girl. She had dark hair poking out from underneath a very large, wide-brim hat. She wore a navy blue overall dress with a bright white blouse below. Her shoes were shiny black patent leather, and she held, in one perfectly normal 5-fingered hand, a long white staff, twice her height. "You'll see," said the girl in a creaking voice. "We'll have our visitor in no time." And with her ash in one hand, secure in her wide-brimmed dark felt hat, she grabbed the brass knob and pulled open the round oak door. The sun-baked earth radiated shimmering heat, and despite what the clock had said, it was obviously noon when the girl stepped out of the beehive onto her own shadow. "We'll ride together," she whispered to the black spot beneath her. As soon as her second foot touched the ground, the building behind her vanished. She stood alone with her shadow in this broad brown plain. "Come along," she said to the shadow, and together, stomping her staff on its personal black spot, she tramped towards the road, diagonally, so that when she finally reached the gentle slope, she had already progressed a good way down the path. Beyond the road, on either side, stretched infinite expanses of nothing. Even the sky above was cloudless. Only the sun, the girl, and her shadow existed out here, and by some miracle of perspective they moved together. "Like garnishes on an invisible skewer," said the girl to her shadow. She started to skip, and her companions bounced with her, the hobbling staff struggling to keep pace. Like that, they walked forever. Nothing changed around them. Gradually, the sun got tired and began to part ways. The shadow, however, grew. It was as if the black spot had been afraid of the light, or the sun had kept it contained, because as the sun sank, the shadows of the girl and the staff began to conspire. "What are you whispering about?" the girl said to them. She kept her eyes ahead, scanning the wasteland for any sign of her foretold visitor. "Nothing," the shadows whispered. Steadily they expanded until they were one. "This is most uncalled for," said the girl, and she struggled to keep her voice from quavering. The shadow, for it was one entity now, stretched over the landscape. It rose like a tidal wave. It consumed the sky. Finally, it was the girl who was underneath the blackness that had once been only a spot. "I thought we were friends," she called into the starless sky. Head back, mouth open to the heavens, she finally noticed the other entity that had gradually crept into view. "It can't be. You?" The wizard, who you'll remember and should not forget, lurked beneath his costume, loved silver. He made his home out of that special substance. Even Tangi was a different shade before he was discovered by his master, who washed him for weeks in a sack of dimes to bring out his special shine. This man, as Tangi often noted, was difficult to understand. Perhaps his mind had been shaken by his access to such inhuman power. Maybe he'd just spent too much time alone. Quite possibly, his magic was the product of a sustained connection to a childishness that in most people is quickly crusted over, a pathway to a realm of thought where imagination and reality converge, the place, you could say, where dreams are born. Obviously, a man of his age would be well acquainted with the moon, but he was such a playful child, and he was pretending to be one besides, that he gave himself over completely to his feelings. In that moment, when he remembered the moon, he, the wizard, the girl, was so struck by her silver beauty that the little girl fell to the ground, mouth hanging open, eyes full of silver light, and howled. She stayed that way, enraptured by the night, for a long time before her visitor finally arrived. The moonstruck girl didn't hear the distant jingling of chimes or the gradual crescendo of rickety wagon wheels. A speckled horse emerged from the darkness, drawing a pale yellow carriage. Steadily the wagon drove towards the girl. A lantern hung above the black-cloaked driver, and the fire cast an arc of light ahead, revealing the wagon's path. Presently, the light fell on the girl squatting in the road. The driver pulled the reins and yelled, "Whoa!" The horse bucked and bristled and grunted and finally tapped a hoof on the girl's shoulder, breaking her trance. "Oh, it's you," she said. "Me?" The driver spoke with a croaking toad's voice. "Get out of the road." The girl stood, dusted off the back of her dress, and stepped to the driver's seat. Using her long ash as a pole, she vaulted up next to the driver. "Who are you?" she said. A gray, liver-spotted hand emerged from the dark cloak and pulled back the hood, revealing the wizened face of a woman. Her skin was brown and wrinkled like a dried apple, and her eyes were glassy and fogged. She smiled, revealing 3 square teeth surrounded by empty space. "They call me Granny." "Who does?" "Why, my helpers." She nodded to the wagon. A barred window was set behind the driver's seat, and when the girl peered through it, she could see several hunched forms portrayed by dancing candlelight. A dark head turned, and she saw a pair of green eyes and a round boy's face. "Would you like to be a helper?" said the old woman. "That depends." The girl held both hands up to the brim of her hat and rubbed the felt. As the old woman watched this gesture, her eyebrow flicked and her smile faltered. Finally, the girl turned to look down the path. "Depends," said the old woman. "Can you tell me the name of your horse?" Granny laughed. "Why, this is Sebastian, my oldest, closest friend." The girl nodded. "Interesting, your friend. Well, I suppose I could, just for a short visit." Again, Granny laughed. "Get in the wagon." The girl stabbed her staff into the dirt and vaulted to the ground. On the other side of the wagon, Granny hobbled down the dangling steps. They met at the back door. There was another barred window in its center, and the door was secured by a heavy iron lock. For security, Granny explained. She pulled a key ring from her robe and opened the lock. Then, holding up a hand to the girl, she cracked the door, poked her head in, and whispered. Turning back to the girl, she bowed and swung the door wide. "Won't you come in?" As soon as she had one foot in the wagon, the girl felt the staff slip from her hand. She turned to see the old woman raise the stick, and with the butt, she pushed the girl tumbling into the compartment. The door slammed and the lock clicked. "Now," said the old woman through the barred window, "you have to deal with me." "Oh my," said the girl, and they both laughed in very different ways. "Yes, it's funny, isn't it, you little fool? It's all a funny game." The girl was rolling on the floor, guffawing until tears fell from her eyes. "Granny, you got me." The old woman snorted and scuffed around the wagon. The compartment bounced as she mounted the steps, and in a moment they were jingling down the road. "We'll be there in no time," the girl said to the circle of forms in the candlelight. The round boy's face leaned down to her. "She's planning to eat us." "Oh my. You should really be more serious. We're not long for this world." The candle that cast the light was set in a sconce high on the right-hand wall, and the boy now stood and loosed the candle from its holder and brought it down, the better to see them all with. He was dressed in rags of various shades, mostly reds and purples. He was somewhat plump, and his hands, clearly visible around the wax base of the candle, were filthy. But his eyes, behind the dancing flame, were brilliant emeralds. "I'm Peter. She got me when I wandered off the path." "Well, she got me on the path, so..." The girl kept on laughing. "I'm Tangy." "Is that a nickname?" Behind the boy, a dark form stamped its foot. "Stop getting to know each other." Peter held the candle towards the form, revealing a bizarre creature. Its legs were covered in brown fur, ending in a pair of short hoofs. It wore a red vest covering a tanned human chest. The head was human too, that of a boy with an angry expression, but his face was a completely different color than his chest. He was as pink as a pig, and his hair stood in rows of fine black bristles. On his back protruded two tiny useless bat wings. "What are you?" said Tangy, overjoyed. She even clapped. "That's Violet," Peter said. The chimera stamped its hoof. "Stop making introductions," Violet repeated. "We're going to die." Across the wagon, the third figure spoke. "What does it matter then, either way?" The voice was gentle, subtly accented with lilting pitches and a soft shh on the hard, normally percussive sounds. He extended a pale hand to the girl, which she apprehensively shook. The man wore a dark suit and no shirt. His skin was almost translucent in its whiteness. "Pinocchio sin Warsha," he said, bowing a head of dark, untonsured curls. "Aren't you a little old to be captured by a witch?" said Tangy. She released her grip and wiped off her hand on her dress. The foreigner made an ambivalent gesture, a circular wave of his hand accompanied by a shrug. He fell back against the wagon wall and crossed his legs. "What is life besides? Should it take this course? Here we are." "Oh, brother," said Tangy. She rolled her eyes and nudged Peter's rag-wrapped shoulder. "So how are we getting out of here?" There was a loud rap on the barred window at the front of the compartment, and the long-nosed silhouette of the witch was revealed as she looked over her shoulder. "I put a spell on you. There's no getting out of there, so don't waste your time plotting." "No offense, Granny, but if you're going to eat me later, then the last thing I'm going to do is give you my remaining time. I'm not eaten yet, and I'd rather go down swinging, if you understand the metaphor." The old woman shook her head and coughed a few dry laughs before she slammed shut the sliding panel over the window. "Good, now we're alone," said Tangy. "So, who has an idea?" "Please stop giving us hope," said the chimera. "I just want to die in peace." "Okay," said Tangy. "Any other ideas?" Mr. Warshaw smiled and repeated his ambivalent hand roll. "We could possibly burn down the wagon in which we are trapped. Perhaps we would then at least take out the old woman with us." Tangy stared at him. "Is that what you want to happen?" It is an option," said the pale man. Tangy scanned the wagon compartment. A trio of shelves ran along the top, and arranged on these were various bottles of colored glass and a few old books. "Anyone know what's in those?" "Which stuff?" said Peter. The girl stepped onto Mr. Warshaw, who was obliged to give her a boost. She grabbed a bottle and tossed it over her shoulder. Peter ran into place, the bottle fell into his hand, and quickly his arms were full of the mysterious objects. Tangy climbed down Warshaw and sat on the floor cross-legged. "Come on, let's see them." She motioned to Peter, who scrambled to set down the bottles and books. He arranged them in a half circle, 4 glass bottles, purple, green, orange, and blue, with 3 thick volumes on either side of the arc. Tangy uncorked the orange bottle. An acrid smell filled the room. "Acid, I think," she muttered to herself. She replaced the cork and moved on to the blue bottle. She pulled out the cork and sniffed, but the smell was unnoticeable. She passed the bottle to Mr. Warshaw. "Take a taste of that." "Me, but it may be poisonous." "What does it matter either way?" I thought. The pale man looked between the bottle and the girl, who stared at him with wide, curious eyes. Finally, the man relented. I will do my duty. He pinched his nose and took a sip. I believe it is pomegranate. Turning, he proceeded to vomit into the corner. Pomegranate. Tangi scratched her chin. Well, whatever it is, it didn't kill you. However, now we know at least one of its effects. Warshaw wiped his mouth with one hand and saluted with the other. I am proud to have been of assistance. Tangi picked up the green bottle and held it towards Peter's candle. If the orange was an acid and the blue was a fruity base, then what might this green one contain? Assuming she had some kind of reasoning behind her choices, she tilted the bottle and watched the dark, thick contents glom to the side. Witch syrup. Peter said, Is that real? You're looking at it. But what is it? No idea. Want to taste? Peter sighed. If it will help, don't taste it, Peter, Tangi said. Uncorking the bottle, she held it near her nose and wafted the vapor with a wave of her hand. Newt. Definitely a fair amount of newt. Could be a magic potion. Could be a sealant of some kind. Yes, it could be that. Who's got a tongue depressor? Violet stamped his hoof and stood. Please stop this nonsense. You're just playing around. When you should be... He huffed and crossed his arms. I should be what? Stamping and huffing? You're already doing that. Now taste the last bottle. You taste it, said the Chimera. Tangi had to applaud him. She turned to the foreign man who was lying back with his eyes shut and both hands clutched to his stomach. What about you, Pinocchio? Regrettably, I fear for my life. But what does it matter? Tangi laughed. I'm only teasing. I know what's in the last bottle. Now about that tongue depressor. No one? Very well. She grabbed one of the volumes and tore out the first page. She folded it several times until it was a thick rectangle. Then she handed this tool and the green bottle of newt-flavored syrup to Peter. Spread that around the doorframe. Violet snorted. Oh, Lord. Yes, everyone pray, said Tangi. We'll need all the help we can get. Peter took the paper and bottle and set about brushing the thick substance around the wagon door. Now watch this, said Tangi. She uncorked the final purple bottle, releasing a floral scent. Then she opened the blue bottle and poured its pomegranate ipecac into the floral substance. It began to foam. Quickly, Tangi replaced the cork. Now everybody, duck! She jumped onto Warshaw and slid the foamy mixture onto the shelf corner, just behind the portion of wall blocking Granny's head. Violet and Peter scrambled under a bench, and as soon as she was off his lap, Tangi and Warshaw did likewise. There was a tremendous pop as the cork rocketed into the ceiling, and the bubbling mixture splattered over the wall. Well, said Violet, are you satisfied? That was just a test, said Tangi. The purple bottle did indeed contain the opposite of the blue one. So heaven sent what, said Violet. He crawled out from under the bench and squatted against the wall. When she caught me, I was an ordinary boy. I banged on the door and the window. I kicked and screamed. Now look at me. If you don't accept your fate, she'll torture you. Torture? Tangi crawled out from underneath the bench and crossed the wagon to sit across from Violet. What do you mean? I mean, look at me. I'm a heaven-sent monster. Aren't you better at kicking now? Aren't you better at kicking now? I'm afraid of what she'll do next. Eat you. Tangi turned to Peter, who was sitting on the bench next to Warshaw, both of them watching her attentively. Candle, said Tangi, and she took it from Peter's hand. Where's my paper tongue depressor? Peter said, I left it stuck to the door. Brilliant, you wretched little ragamuffin. She kissed him on the cheek. Peter, blushing through his rags, looked down and wrung his hands nervously. Tangi rounded on Violet. Let this be a lesson to you. She crossed the wagon to the door, where the paper rectangle was stuck to the wall. The seam glistened with waxy syrup. Tangi set the candle to the paper, which quickly caught fire. I thought you disagreed, said Warshaw, backing away from the flames. Your idea was fine, I just perfected it. The fire spread up the paper and onto the line of syrup. It followed the path of substance framing the door in flames. The cart jingled on, the horse's steps unbroken, the witch totally ignorant of her helper's machinations. Finally, the burned door fell right off the back of the wagon with a loud slam. The wagon lurched and the passengers stumbled as the vehicle came to a halt. Run, called Tangi, and everyone, the girl, the boy, the man, and the Chimera, went bounding out the hole into the night. The four companions ran across the empty plain until the road was a distant memory. They stopped when Tangi finally fell on her back. She smiled and shut her eyes, spread her arms out and sighed. Feel that moonlight. The three boys circled around her, panting, until Warshaw staggered a few paces off to vomit again. Peter sat cross-legged behind Tangi's head on her right. The Chimera stood on the other side, pacing in circles. She'll find us. I know she will, said Violet. Fine, murmured Tangi. Her eyes were still closed as she basked in the moon's glow. I need to get my stick back anyway. Violet rolled his eyes and went on pacing. We need to start running again, soon. Meanwhile, Peter had tilted his head back to look at the moon. He shut his eyes and smiled. I can't feel it, but I can see it, I think, through my lids. The glow is there. You're a good boy, Peter, said Tangi. Stomach finally empty, Warshaw, looking so much the worse for wear, trudged back to the group and collapsed, legs splayed above Tangi's head. "What now?" he said. "Now whatever," Tangi said. Tangi sat up, winked at the moon, and then she turned to face the boys so that the group sat in a triangle with Violet pacing along one side. "Well, this was a fun distraction. You all did beautifully, but I was expecting a visitor." Peter and Violet exchanged a questioning glance. "A visitor to where?" said Violet. "To my life, of course. I dreamed it. He's going to come along the path, a well-dressed man. He was wearing a blue plaid suit and cowboy boots, and he had a monocle, a waxed mustache, the most glorious greasy hair, and he carried a thin black cane like a crocodile." "What?" said the boys together. "You've never... Oh, it's all dream speak, you have to understand. Anyway, I thought I had to find him, but obviously..." While she'd been speaking, Tangi's eyes had been dancing between her companions, confirming that Warshaw's suit was drab, and Peter was hardly a mustached gentleman. Now she looked over Violet, and she stared at his furry hoofs. Cowboy. Mumbling, she turned to Peter, mummy wrapped in strips of red and purple cloth forming a wretched pattern, an inversion of the blue finery, but regardless, she shook her head at Warshaw and grinned. Greasy. She jumped to her feet and howled at the moon. "My God," she said, "my beautiful argent goddess." "Who are you?" said Peter. "What are you?" said Violet. Warshaw finally vomited one last time. "I'm an ordinary girl trying to find my way, and you three are supposed to help me." Peter's eyes went wide, and for the first time in a very long time, he laughed. "Us? Help you?" "Yes, I can see it so clearly. We're meant to go on a quest." Warshaw wiped his mouth and laughed too. "I am regrettably not so much the adventurer. I am more for the world of books." "Then that's your quest," said Tangi, "to become what you are not." "Oh, I can see it so clearly." And she explained to the trio there on the barren wasteland plain, the glorious full moon spotlighted above her, the mystery that she, or he, had explained to so many companions on so many quests before. They were heroes. Every hero wants something, or really, they need something which they are bound to discover. "I know what I want," said Violet. He looked down at his hodgepodge body, and he gently stroked his furry thighs. "If you can help me." He turned from the group so that they could not see his face. Tangi smiled and pointed at Warshaw. "We all know what you need." The pale man sighed and repeated his ambivalent hand roll and shrug. "Very well," he relented. "Peter?" The rag boy looked nervously between his companions. "Me? I have to want something? Anything in the whole world. I'm just a boy from the streets of the town. All I ever wanted was a place to sleep, some bread, friends." He looked away sheepishly. "I don't really know. What do I want?" Tangi bent down and clapped both her hands on the boy's rag-bound shoulders. "We'll find it together." Sitting there with this incredible girl's body so close to his, feeling her warmth, looking into her sharp golden-ringed eyes, poor Peter thought that he had already found his desire, and there was going to be a very unfortunate day somewhere in Peter's future when he would figure out some of life's secrets. In the meantime, the four friends, now companions, stood together on the wasteland plain, looking up as directed by their mysterious muse at the radiant body shining down from the heavens. "What is it you want, Tangi?" said Peter. Slowly, the girl extended one soft, full hand and pointed to the shining goddess. "There, I want to go all the way, out there." Even Violet had to smile at such a lofty, ridiculous ambition. "And," she added with a sly wink, "to get my stick back." For the wizard's duck-shaped ash plant was still in the possession of our hero's one-time captor, and somewhere out there, lurking in the darkness of space and the depths of time, Granny the Witch was plotting her own adventure. No one had ever escaped her clutches before. She would watch and wait, and when the moment was right, those bold fools would be devoured.
I'm the one, they gonna
This has been Animal Songs, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb, produced by Supermoon. Find us on TikTok, YouTube, or at our website, gosupermoon.com. That's GOSUPERMOON.com. You can also find our work alongside many other talented artists at looksees.com. That's LOOK-SEES.com. This concludes the Crocodile chapter. I wonder what spirit we will meet next. Until then, thank you for listening.
All I got to say is